How's it going, guys? Rachel West here, and we're back talking about the draft, and we're going to be breaking down some of the guys that are coming out of the Florida schools. So who better to talk to than our colleges reporter, Matt Baker. Matt, thanks for joining us here.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So we'll dive right in here, and let's get to the thing that's at the top of mind of everyone, one of the best guys available in the draft this year. He just had a monster year at the University of Florida last year. Kyle Pitts. Talk to us a little bit about him and where do you think he's going to end up landing in this draft?
Yeah, Kyle Pitts, aside from Clemson phenom Trevor Lawrence, Kyle Pitts might be the best player in this draft. I mean, he's 6'5", he's 245. He's a big kind of prototypical tight end, but he ran a 40 in the 4.4. So he is quicker than just about every other tight end. He's really kind of the perfect fit for the way the NFL is right now, because they want tight ends they can move to be the traditional spot, move them out wide, move them in the slot, and then take advantage of mismatches. That's what Dan Mullen did with Pitts at Florida, where he had an unanimous All-American season. Mackie Ward is the top tight end, one of the best or maybe the best tight end of my lifetime. And maybe he'll be able to do that in the NFL. And that's why he's in this position where, again, outside of the top quarterbacks, he's probably the best guy. He could go as high as probably fourth to the Falcons, maybe slip into 6th or 7th, something like that. But still, we're talking about he'll be one of the highest drafted Gators ever, and maybe the highest drafted tight end of kind of the modern era of the NFL.
And from one Kyle to another Kyle, talking Kyle Trask, where do you think he's going to end up landing? There's been a lot of talk. Maybe he'll end up with the Bucs if they decide to take a quarterback. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, the argument I would make on Kyle Trask with the Bucs is, look, the Bucs have a quarterback. They don't need somebody to start right now. They have a Brady fellow of some sort. But they might need somebody to kind of sit behind Brady for a couple years, learn how to be a pro, learn from one of the best of all time, and maybe at some point develop into a starter. Well, Kyle Trask has experience as a backup. He was a backup in high school, backup in college, and then when he had opportunities, be that in spot duty in high school, and when Felipe Franks hurt his ankle against Kentucky, he went in and he didn't just play well, he played extremely well and was a Heisman finalist this past year. Now, there's kind of concerns about his arm strength and his mobility, but I think absolutely he makes sense as a guy the Bucs should at least consider, and they have certainly kicked the tires on him. In terms of what is his stock, maybe he can slip into the end of the first round. Maybe he's available all the way into day 3. He could go anywhere kind of in that mix, which is very, very broad, but I think kind of opinions are really split on him right now.
And if you're looking for a good person who loves the game of football, I don't think you're going to find a better candidate there. And then let's talk about a couple other guys from Florida, Kadarius Toney, Marvin Wilson. Where do you think they're going to end up going this year?
Yeah. Kadarius Toney to me is a first-round guy. He went from being a really good football player that give him the ball in space and let him do his thing, go really poorly or really, really well, to being a really good receiver this past year with the Gators. And I think that's going to show up. I think teams are going to see what he can do in space, and then just the way he's improved and being a more polished receiver, I think is a first-round guy. If the Bucs could always use more offensive weapons. Maybe there's a chance he's there at 32, and if so, I think he'd be a really easy pick. Marco Wilson's the other Gator that I'm really interested in. Obviously, he's probably most well known for Florida fans for throwing the shoe against LSU. To his credit, he matured from that. He took responsibility, I think, for it once we finally got to talk to him. And then on his pro day, he had a great 40 time, put up very, very good numbers. He's a guy that, I think maybe a day 2 prospect with a chance to have a very nice NFL career.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the NFL scouts and all the teams can also get over that shoe throw.
All it takes is one, Rachel. All it takes is one.
Right. I think it'll take a little longer for Florida fans to get over it. But that's another story. So moving on to a different school in the state of Florida, FSU. They got a couple guys who are probably going to be drafted, Asante Samuel being one of the big ones.
Yeah, Asante Samuel Jr., obviously his dad played in the NFL for quite some time, very well respected. Asante Samuel Jr. is pretty well polished. He created a lot of turnovers, both in fumbles and interceptions, broke up a bunch of passes, a very good kind of lockdown guy, but he's not as big as kind of your Patrick Surtains and that sort of thing, who are going to be the first, J.C. Warren from South Carolina, your top couple DBs in this draft. But he's in that next tier. I think there's a chance that goes at the end of the first round. I've seen that in some mock drafts, maybe probably not with the Bucks. I don't think that's probably the best match, but certainly if not in the first round, I think he's a second round prospect.
And who else, who's a Seminole, do you think is going to be drafted here?
Marvin Wilson to me is the most interesting one. He's a 5-star defensive tackle, top interior D lineman in recruiting a couple of years ago. He had a good Florida State career. I don't think he quite lived up to the superstar height where he was a recruit. Some of that wasn't his fault. He was banged up this year, had been banged up at times. But he didn't quite, I think, progress the way a lot of people expected him to. But still, he's a big dude. He is strong, not as twitchy and explosive as some people would like, but a very productive player who, to his credit, has done a lot of good things in the community as well, which I think teams are going to look at and figure out what they want to do with that. But he's, I thought a couple of years ago he would be a day 1 guy. Now I think it's more like day 3. And I'll give you one other Florida State name real fast, Tamorian Terry, big time receiver. Basically, all he did was score breakaway touchdowns, it seemed like, for the Noles. But maybe not as quick as people thought. Again, he's got the size, but just not necessarily the quickest guy out there. He's going to be a day 3 prospect with a kind of boom or bust potential, I think, in the NFL.
Awesome. And then to work our way down to the southern part of the state, the University of Miami. What guys coming out of there interest you?
Yeah, it's clear that the 2 pass rushers, Greg Rousseau and Jalen Phillips, they're really 2 sides of the same coin. They both were number 15. Jalen Phillips played very well this past year, once he was finally healthy as a 5-star number 1 recruit in the country out of UCLA. Transferred to Miami, had a sensational second-team All-America season this year, and really established himself as maybe the best pass rushing talent in this draft. Then the other one's Greg Rousseau, who had a fantastic 2019 season. But really, that's all he did. He redshirted in 2018, blew up size-wise. In 2019, second in the country in sacks behind only Chase Young. Then opted out this past year. So just 2 different sets of small sample sizes with Jalen Phillips and Greg Rousseau. Both of them could go in the first round. I think if the Bucks are looking for a pass rusher, and you can never have too many of them, if one of them's available, they would make sense as targets.
Yeah, and the Bucks they have the luxury of taking whoever they want, so they don't really.
Good problem to have, right?
Yeah, I think Rousseau will be interesting since he was an opt-out. See how all those guys, what ends up happening for them in this year's draft. But Matt, thank you for that excellent breakdown of all the guys coming out of these Florida schools. Everybody, make sure you're following along with Matt on Twitter leading up to the draft here for more of this expert analysis. And be sure that you're checking out tampabay.com for your latest draft coverage.